You can't argue that wrestling isn't weird. We've seen so much crazy stuff over the years, someone can win any debate about that in seconds. At one point, a man dressed as a turkey and then hatched from a giant egg. And if that's not enough, there was also a porn star who had just decided to be a wrestler and once almost had his penis chopped off. It's one thing coming up with these ideas to begin with, but the rulebook goes out the window when somehow the same gimmick is officially greenlit twice. Who in their right mind sees one concept explode into 1,000 pieces and then decides it would be really smart to try again? Crap is crap, friends. Doesn't matter what decade it happens in. It seems as if there's no barrier when it comes to what will fly either. You can come up with the most bizarre idea and someone somewhere will want to see what happens when it's introduced in front of an audience. Power gone mad, I tell ya. It does make for great fodder when it comes to lists like this, however, and for that, I'm grateful. I'm also Simon from What Culture, and this is 10 bizarre wrestling gimmicks you won't believe happened more than once. Number 10, the boat enthusiast. Everything that is feasible has been done within wrestling when it comes to a character. This goes from the super complex to the downright obvious, and of course bin men. Can't miss that one out. The guy who removes your trash right before heading to the squared circle. This net goes far and wide too, which is relevant as yes, we've even had dudes that really like boats. And I did say dudes with an S, there's more than one. Throughout the years, we've had Fred Ottman as Tugboat Thomas, and he was such a huge fan of vessels like this that he even made a boat noise when cutting promos, and of course had changed his last name to match his biggest passion. Soon after in WCW there was Mike Rotunda, who was also IRS, don't forget, who decided he was a captain and even got himself some seamen, which included Abdullah the Butcher and Norman the Lunatic. Even today this obsession continues as Shakara has smooth sailing Ashley Remington, who is specifically a yachtsman. How weird is it that 3 separate companies have decided this is a way to a fan's heart? I guess if you like boats then, yeah? You're on the money. Number 9, the BAYOU PSYCHOPATH. Turning the clock back to the 90s, Cape Fear was a massive movie, especially within the wrestling scene. Stone Cold Steve Austin constantly says how much he likes it on his podcast, and even Vince McMahon was enamored with Max Cady, the bad guy. It is one of Robert De Niro's standout roles, and this all came together to convince the boss that he should work it into his storylines. The first attempt came with Waylon Mercy, who was renamed Dan Spivey. No one really remembers him now, but his legacy certainly did inspire Bray Wyatt, or so it seems. There's plenty of elements in that persona that seem very similar to the original template of Caddy, right down to the softly spoken creepiness he relied on so much. This also means that it took McMahon 20 years to get it right, but ultimately, he was able to create a wrestling heel from the film. Doesn't explain why Wyatt was then booked into the floor, but maybe that's just part of the mystery and mystique. Number 8, the wrestling magician. Because we are referencing wrestling here, I have to tell you that in this case we're not talking about characters that have actual powers, even though in the real world that wouldn't be true either. But The Undertaker's lightning bolts or Papa Shango's ability to make the Ultimate Warrior throw up do not come under magic in this sense. I'm talking about performers who do tricks as a way to entertain the crowd, even though they're meant to be wrestling. And yes, my brain hurts as well. Take Fantasio, for example. Out of the WWE almost as soon as he got in, his one match of note against Tony DeVito saw him confuse his opponent by making objects appear from nowhere and even making his pants vanish after he'd pinned him. Surely that should have been a DQ. We have more of these too when turning to WCW and the controversial Black Scorpion. Running riot in 1990, the magic he possessed was thrown right into the main event scene when he went after the one and only Sting. To try and get inside the Stinger's head, he turned an audience member into a tiger, but then didn't get it to attack his new foe. That makes sense. Surprisingly, the Scorpion was dropped pretty soon after this, and also revealed himself to be Ric Flair. All of this was awful in case you don't know. Number 7, the butts guy. Just imagine getting to the big time and having your ass be your defining feature. If you're well proud of that, it's probably okay, but it's also really, really bizarre. You're trying to get people to cheer you because of your butt, or because you yourself like butts. And don't pretend that hasn't happened. That is essentially Billy Gunn's whole persona wrapped up as he was the ass man who had some theme music that also talked about his ass. It has the line, "I'm gonna stick 'em." I don't know what that means. There was another that was even more on the money before this though, when Brutus Beefcake in one of his many gimmicks became the Booty Man in World Championship Wrestling. Looking like a budget Ultimate Warrior, he cut holes in his tights where his bum cheeks would be and finished foes off with his dreaded high knee. He also had Valet Booty Babe played by Kimberly Page, and all of this is better off thrown down a well. Somehow, it wasn't even the worst of Brutus's creations. I don't know either. Number 6, an actual astronaut. Why would a trained astronaut give all that up to become a wrestler? And if you did, why would you still be wearing your space-like gear? None of it makes any sense, which is why Max Moon in the 90s, Spaceman Frank Hickey in the 60s, and the more recent Aerostar all have a lot to answer for. Hickey may be the oddest, as he spent half of his career just being a normal dude. Then all of a sudden he was wearing a quilted Buck Rogers-like cape and claiming to hail from the stars. It was genius in many ways, as it extended his career for another 3 decades all the way into Memphis in the 90s. That's not bad going. WWE thought there was something in this because they gave us Max Moon, whose biggest claim to fame was losing to Shawn Michaels on the first ever Monday Night Raw. Don't forget who was meant to be under that hood as well. Conan may never have lived it down if a change of circumstances at the last minute saw Paul Diamond get this spot instead. When it comes to Aerostar, well, he's pretty good really, and probably one of the best luchadors there is. So from Space or Not, he kicks ass. There's nothing wrong with that. Number 5, large love machines. Another one where you scratch your head after thinking about it. Mark Henry, who was legit one of the strongest people on the planet back in the day, got cast as sexual chocolate during the Attitude Era. Despite being able to flip cars and gorilla press slam Vader, WWE thought it was better he date grandmas and be one large comedy act, as opposed to the awesome Hall of Pain run we finally got in 2010. Should have just done that from the off. It wasn't enough for the promotion though, because years later they tried the exact same thing again when they took Viscera and actually made him into the world's largest love machine. Now the issue here was that while Henry was an athlete at his heart, Big Vis wasn't really, so he just humped his opponents until they gave in. It's one of those moments where you should be thankful we've gone PG, because this would absolutely be rolled out again if Vince McMahon could get away with it. And how did WWE know he was the world's largest love machine too? Had they done a survey? All this too after being some kind of murderer in the Ministry of Darkness. Even the great Khali got it a little bit when his whole gimmick became focused on his attraction to women. Never ever works. Number 4, the race car dude. I love these ones. It's so bottom of the barrel I can't help but laugh. It's like we have a conversation about what someone may do for a job, and then whatever suggestions are brought up, we apply back to wrestling. It's all part of that occupational gimmick era WWE became obsessed with for some reason, and of course in this sense Bob Holly was top of the list when he was Thurman Sparky Plug, which is also the dumbest name ever. Nothing more than a friendly NASCAR driver, he had checkered flags on his tights and made a lot of car puns. What else would a guy that loved engines talk about? It hit a brick wall before long as the WWE went into a tailspin. I'm hilarious, I am. And from there, Bob Holly could just become Bob Holly, but that didn't stop TNA from thinking they could do something with the concept. They went way too far with it, however, because they created All Wheels Wrestling, a whole spin-off promotion that would be a hybrid of wrestling and motorsports, which is what everybody was desperate for in 2011. It did feature Jay Lethal dressed up like a Power Ranger though. So there was that. Number 3, the condescending fitness instructor. The Body Donners were a pair of assholes, but at the time they did represent something different for WWE when it came to bad guys who would shame the audience for how they looked. Up to this point, the only advice that was given out were people like Rick Rude saying everyone was fat as he gyrated his hips. Skip, Zip and Sonny at least wanted to try and educate people's minds and improve their health, even if they did that through being huge bullies in the mid-90s. This gimmick died off for a while until WWE signed ECW's Nova in 2005. That wasn't going to cut it, they decided, so he was reborn as Simon Dean, an obnoxious personal trainer. I actually thought this was good in places, and the infamous Simon system was a fixture on SmackDown for almost 2 years. Dean's punch-me-in-the-face grin was just the icing on the cake, even though he'd be the first person to tell you not to eat cake. Unfortunately, it didn't have longevity, and before long it had petered out, proving there's only one wrestling health plan that has any weight, and that is, of course, DDP Yoga. Bang. Number 2, the Leprechaun. Hornswoggle is the most famous leprechaun in wrestling history, and what a thing to say that is. He was on WWE TV for years and often used as the punchline in huge angles. He was Vince McMahon's son for a few months, don't forget, before Fit Finlay came and reclaimed him. Given that before he was just used as a weapon that could be thrown around, and it's not a bad rise from the bottom. He is not, however, the only leprechaun that's ever appeared, as we can also talk about Dwayne Bruce. That person is better known as WCW power plant trainer Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker, and he briefly served in the Dungeon of Doom under Braun the Leprechaun. And man, does that name have different connotations today. The best bit about this is Sarge is 5'10" and in no way a little person in the sense a leprechaun would be. But this is wrestling, so therefore we can do what we want. It's probably why he was repackaged as Jack Boot Military Man, but to be fair, That is not much of an improvement. Number 1, the angry baseball thing. If someone could get in touch with me to explain this one, that would be great. But in 1994, when Major League Baseball was on strike, WWE created Abe Knuckleball Schwartz and MVP, Most Violent Player, who were wrestlers that painted themselves up to look like baseballs. Just think about that for a second. That was the idea somebody had. Knuckleball was actually just a Brooklyn brawler who would often get grabbed for roles such as this, whereas MVP was former professional ball player Dale Torborg, so at least that worked. Although he did go on to become the Kiss Demon, so the less said about any of this, the better. For some reason, both kind of looked demonic too, especially Schwartz. It was like a pro player had stepped out from the gates of hell, which would explain why Dale got the nod when Gene Simmons and co felt like someone should be wrestling on their behalf. I just want to know why these dudes were evil. They get kicked out of the league and couldn't get over it? I don't think there will ever be an answer.